Welcome to the Chelsea Film Festival 8th Annual Edition. My name is Ingrid Jean-Baptiste. I'm the founder and director of the Chelsea Film Festival. It is celebrating its 8th annual anniversary this year. Yes, it's 2020, and that's why we're bringing you a wellness event with fantastic speakers. We have 130 films from 18 countries until Monday on Film Festival Plus. The link will be pasted in the chat in the Zoom room and also on Facebook. Please support the arts. Please support emerging filmmakers. This is a very important time right now, and we need your support. So it's very easy and simple to create your pass, and we have really amazing content out there that you can watch. We have documentaries, short films, feature-length films, and also some virtual reality experiences. For the past 8 years, we've been creating many different live events and bringing you actually for the first time this wellness event that I'm really excited to share with you. And the topic of today's panel is Awakening Times, Finding Balance in 2020. And we have, as I said, wonderful special guests with us today. Thank you for your time. I'd like to welcome our jury president. His name is Paul Calderon. He is an actor. He is also a Tao instructor. And my next guest is Kimilla Grace. She's the creator of Kimilla TV. Welcome, Kimilla. She's joining us from Australia. I'd like to welcome James Sebastiano. He is the producer of Chasing the Present and also an award winner of last year's film festival. He won Best Documentary last year. So welcome back into the Zoom room and into the Chelsea Film Festival edition. And last but certainly not least, we have Anna Colbert, who is also a producer of the same film, the documentary called Chasing the Present, that is now available on Apple TV. Please watch it after this talk. It's a very interesting documentary that won last year, and she will be moderating the panel today. So Anna, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Ingrid. It's wonderful to be back. We had such a great experience at your festival last year. So yeah, it's really nice that we get to come back and talk about our favorite thing, which is consciousness and finding balance and ways to improve your mental health in the world. That's we made an entire film looking at that, looking at ways to overcome suffering and anxiety, and looking at ways to be present. And I think right now, if people suffer a lot from anxiety anyway, probably right now extra more than at other times. So I would love to hear, I would love to hear from Paul, what's your experience with keeping balance, especially in our industry, which is so, intense and wonderful and hectic? How do you find time with this? You've done so many amazing projects. How do you find time to stay centered and balanced in yourself?
Well, back in the early 80s, I started studying Ashtanga yoga with a great teacher named Beryl Bender. And she began teaching me the Ujjayi Breath, which is a very dynamic sort of breath. And I think a year after I told her, you literally saved my life, because, we hardly breathe in our society. We breathe from the collarbone up. We don't really go down into the belly with the breath. So the shallower the breath, the more anxiety we're going to suffer. So in yoga, she immediately began to teach me how to breathe from the bottom up, instead of just sipping little gulps of air from here. And it literally, like I said, I told her, you saved my life, because without the breath, we're at the mercy of everything that's around us, like buffeting us around. So I made it a habit since 82, 83, to always be working on the breath. Throughout the day, morning, noon, evening, night, it's constant with me, because I know that as soon as it goes, as soon as the breath goes, this is going to go.
Yeah. No, that's great. Like, can you elaborate more on, you said it saved your life. So how did you feel before you started this practice?
I felt kind of like just scattered mentally, emotionally, not physically, but I mean it invades the physical structure as well because if you're scattered up here mentally and emotionally, again you just feel buffeted, like you're buffeted around, buffeted around, buffeted around, like you have no control over what's around you because it's just like the wind's coming at you from different angles, and you're just so here with the breath and with the different breathing patterns, you're able to just center yourself. So you're better able to handle the stresses throughout the day. If not, then it's just yeah, I mean just drive yourself crazy. There's a saying in yoga, where the breath goes, the mind goes. So if they're in unison, you'll be okay. But if one is disrupted, the other one is going to be disrupted as well.
Yeah, it's a great saying. It's very true. And Kimilla, how did you start on your journey? Like, how did you feel before, and how did you feel when you found yoga and these practices?
I started when I was a child, and it was part of my everyday life. So it became something that I was devoted to as an adult, just naturally. And I never imagined that this would be the career that I would take. But it's just the most profound gift to humanity. So we just keep sharing it. And yeah, my mother gave it to me, actually. She was just passionate about studying with an Indian Swami, and I was just exposed to her personal practice as a child, and I saw her radiate after her practice. And so I guess I picked up on that energy field, and then I met her teacher, and she was like a pure goddess. And then as a teenager, I was obviously going through a lot of those classic teenage issues, but yoga was my anchor. So I ended up just going deeper into that spiritual path in my teenage years. And then Ayurveda came along, and I followed the path of Ayurveda. And yeah, then Kundalini yoga came along, which was the lightning bolt experience when I was 21. And that changed my perception of everything, because I felt like I'd finally discovered the magic. What I'd always known was inside the yoga practice kind of came through the Kundalini practice. And then, yeah, I've just continued that and expanded that for the past 16 years.
Yeah, that sounds wonderful. You're lucky that you found it so young.
I know, I'm so blessed.
That's really great. So James, obviously I know your story, but how were you feeling? What prompted you to go on this journey?
Well, yeah, about 5 years ago, I started making the film Chasing the Present because I was really suffering a lot with my anxiety. I was having panic attacks on a weekly or monthly basis, like just overwhelming, completely out of control panic attacks, to the point where I couldn't even drive a car down the highway without freaking out after the first 5 minutes. So, for me, it just got to the point where I just didn't want to suffer anymore. I was just tired of suffering, having these panic attacks so often, and just letting this struggle that I was going through control my life. It reached a breaking point, and that's how the journey started, is just trying to understand that better and unravel that. And I think this panel is very interesting. The topic is well-being and wellness, and what does that mean, really? Like, what does it mean to feel that way in life, and to be satisfied with that? And for me, I think a good definition for myself, which is kind of a measure of how I'm doing on the well-being scale, so to speak, is just like, how connected am I to my true self? How connected am I to the core of my being, like to consciousness, awareness, God, whatever word you want to use, but how connected are we to that space? And for me, that level of connection is the sole thing that determines my well-being. So if I'm like completely disconnected from that space, I'm going to be tossed around like the wind. When things come up, I'm just all over the place and just getting blown around, and things are struggling, But if we're really, really connected to that core, and we do these beautiful yoga practices and these meditation practices and these other different practices that help us to connect to that space, if we're really connected and anchored to that space, you know, when we lose our job, when a pandemic comes, when things happen, of course we feel emotions and things come up, but we're not totally shaken and totally destroyed, you know, because we're identified with something deeper. We're identified with the true part of what we are. And for me, that's really the core of what well-being is all about.
Yeah, that's a really great way of looking at it. And Paul, how do you feel that wellness? What does that mean for you?
You know, I describe it as you wouldn't go throughout the day, throughout the week without brushing your teeth or bathing. And to me, it's the same thing. You know, just doing the practices, whether it's yoga, whether it's the pranayama with different breathing patterns. It again, I see it like energetic brushing, just keeping everything just clean as much as I can. To let it kind of like let the whatever has accumulated as far as negativity or stress or whatever it is to kind of be, you know, gently scrubbed away throughout the day, because I got to do it throughout the day because it's constant assault throughout the day, especially nowadays. So throughout the day, it's okay. I stop and I try to center myself with the breath and just allow things to pass through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so important to keep up your daily practice. You know, everybody accepts that you go to the gym numerous times a week to train your body, but we don't pay the same attention to our mind. And I think that's equally as important. So Kimilla, how do you feel wellness? What does wellness mean to you?
Definitely about balance, feeling in balance and feeling maximum vitality within the being. So on all aspects. And if there's an emotional storm, that's the indicator that that part is out of balance. So we can go in and discharge and neutralize those emotions through our practices, or being in nature, or connecting to the heart, or going out and playing in this universe. Yeah, it's definitely connecting to the physical realm and keeping your physical life structured and in harmony with your spiritual life. So we are in that holistic space. And if you're out of balance, there's all of these amazing tools that we can access to bring about optimal wellness. So yeah, bringing the brain into its state of the frontal lobes being activated is also one of the highest points of wellness, because that's when we feel our divine connection. Yeah, multiple facets to wellness.
Yeah, and that, you know, there's that brings me to wonder, like, there's so many different ways for all of us to keep ourselves healthy and balanced. So James, what are some of the things that you do to keep yourself, or to like manage your anxiety and keep yourself present?
I think, you know, Kimilla just touched on it for sure. For me, I think, well, meditation's a huge part, but what she touched on is this being in nature, you know, traveling around the world and speaking to all these different people from different religions and different spiritual traditions and different cultures. And the one thing that I found in common with everybody was just how important it is to spend time and to connect with nature, and how just being in nature and going for a hike in the woods or going to the beach, or just being in these places where kind of the background noise simmers down a bit and you can just really connect in the moment with what's happening around you. So for me, I think being in nature is such a powerful tool, and it's completely free. You know, so many people are always like, oh, I don't have the money to do this, and you know, there's this kind of stigma attached to it, but the most powerful tools don't cost anything. You know, going out into the woods is completely free, and sitting in your house and learning a meditation practice and just closing your eyes and feeling where you're at and connecting with your heart. These things don't cost anything, and they're completely accessible to everyone. So for me, meditation is probably the thing that completely changed my life, and that in combination with spending lots of time in nature.
Yeah, those are great tools to use. And so Paul, how do you feel, like, what are the practices, what are some tools that you use to keep yourself centered?
Well, I get up every morning and have a routine that I follow. In the afternoon, I have another routine that I follow. Then in the evening, I have another routine that I follow. It incorporates the breath, it incorporates meditation. As James was saying, when I'm in New York, I have Prospect Park right down the block, so I'm walking around trying to take everything in. If you don't have access to nature, to woods, if you're living in a neighborhood that doesn't allow you to have access to that, you can just go inside. As James was saying, meditative practice where you can just close your eyes and just, there's a huge, vast universe inside, and you can just connect with that. And that's very important because we try to, I guess, label ourselves with what's outside as opposed to what's inside. So it's that constant going in so we can go out as opposed to going out so we can go in. That's the best way that I can put it.
Yeah, and it's great to hear that you do so many practices during the day. I always try to meditate in the morning, or I have intentions to do different practices, but I don't always do them. But I do feel better when I make time for it. And it's almost like when you make time for these things, you give yourself more time in your head and how you live in the world. So I wanted to hear from Kimilla, could you give us some examples of practices that you do?
Yes, I've got many different inspirations that come to me. And at the moment I'm inspired by a Moroccan woman who is a martial artist, and she's teaching me Muay Thai, and we're going to get into Jiu-Jitsu. And so this practice is something that's completely breaking beyond anything that I've ever worked with, apart from natural horsemanship, which is just working with the equestrian world, but having the horses as your meditation. So we're at one with that creature. These practices are they just blow my mind.
Yeah. That again, being with animals and going back to nature. I read about, there's somewhere people are doing cow therapy where people go and hang out with cows, and you just sit with them for an hour and you get to hug them.
Yeah, that's good.
It helps people with their anxiety. And I think that's something that we live in our world and cities and busy lives that maybe we have forgotten about.
Yeah, there's just so much that goes way beyond the yoga mat and our classic perception of spiritual practice and those programs. It's so magical to have this world to just play and explore, and every moment is a meditation, and everything that we're doing is a reflection of our divine truth. And so we're just making love constantly with ourselves in the relationship of everything. So I'm totally in love with the martial arts at the moment as a practice. It's just exploding me. I've never felt that part of myself activated.
Oh wow, that sounds really great. So it's also interesting, you then are always researching and doing different modalities.
Yes, I'm actually training with kinesiology, and I'm in my 3rd year, and this modality is something that's very special. So that's my current project.
Cool. Well, James, what would you say to someone if they were asking you, how could they, do you have any suggestions on what practices they could start or different things they could do specifically?
I think, well, first of all, just based on what we were saying last time, have you guys seen the Octopus Teacher documentary on Netflix? It reminded me of Kimilla and the horse well, it's totally different, but that idea of just, it's amazing. I highly recommend it. I just watched it. And this guy just goes out every day for 360 something days in a row. And he just gains this relationship with, the octopus is the tool, so to speak, that just shows, but he's just really going there, and he changed his whole life. He was out of work, out of everything, and just really needing a change. And then he got under the water and just started connecting with with different aspects of himself, you know, connecting with love and reigniting that love that he had in himself. It's a really beautiful documentary, and it just reminded me of that. It's called My Octopus Teacher or something like that. It just came out on Netflix. Really good. But tools, yeah, I think, you know, I think meditation's the most accessible thing, really, you know, and there's so many different types of meditations. There's so many different teachers. There's guided meditations if your mind's like, just like mine is still, and mine was when I started, which is completely out of control. And, you know, just me sitting quiet in a room is like torture, you know. Not anymore, but that's how it was. So a guided meditation with a beautiful voice that you resonate with might be a good place to start. You know, it's not necessarily an easy thing. If we think about it, like, you know, in the criminal system in America, like the worst thing that you can do to someone is leave them alone in a room by themselves. Like, that's what happens if you're really bad in jail. If you're a murderer in jail and you do something wrong in that circumstance, they put you alone in a room. Like, that's how difficult it can be to overcome your mind and to learn how to watch your thoughts and all that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily an easy thing. That's why it's good to just try it, listen to different guided meditations, see who you connect with, and don't put such high expectations on ourselves. Like, if you meditate for 5 minutes, it's amazing. You don't have to go out and try to do it for 2 hours the first time and think that you failed. You know, there's no failing. Just sitting there and just being with yourself and just connecting with yourself and just holding yourself and just trying to be present is such a beautiful thing that so many of us like didn't do. You know, we weren't taught how to be emotionally intelligent in school when we were younger. Now, you know, that stuff and meditation, it's coming into schools, but we didn't know these kind of things when we were younger. We weren't taught these kind of things. So I think really just learning how to sit with ourselves and be with ourselves through the comfortable times and the uncomfortable times is a really powerful place to start.
Yeah, I mean, when I like went to my first yoga class, I just remember being like completely incapable of standing there. Like, I was going out of my mind when it just in these different poses. And it was the first time I really realized how busy and crazy my mind was, because it was just like, why can't I just hold this pose, you know, for a moment? And yeah, I'd heard from so many people kept talking about yoga the way I've heard numerous people, the way some of you on the panel have said, that yoga like saved your life and changed your life. And I just wanted to keep going until I understood what people are talking about. And now I definitely do.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, for me, it started actually by being a vegetarian. And I'm not like a preachy type of person who's like, everybody should be a vegetarian right now, or else I'm not friends with you. You know, like, people can do what they like and it's all good. But for me, like, I went from just being a crazy drug user and partying 6 nights a week to all of a sudden like reading a book and like, oh, maybe I could be a vegetarian. So I tried it for 30 days. And then for me, it was the first time in my life that I started to become aware. And it was just becoming aware of something as simple as what I was putting in my body. But it still was an entry point to awareness, you know? And it was food for me. That's how it all started. And then I was like, oh, I started reading these books. What's meditation? Oh, cool. What's yoga? Oh, wow. You know, it just like led me down that path. So I think any practice, whether it be with animals or being in nature or practicing meditation or practicing yoga, anything where you kind of get out of this way that you're currently living and you start to see that there's something deeper than that, you know, that there's this awareness that kind of pervades everything. Anything that can help us tap into awareness is a great place to start.
Yeah, I think just like you're saying, anything that makes you feel good. I mean, even if you're not doing a specific practice, I know people who like take walks in the forest and they may not know why it makes them feel good, but it just centers them and it makes them feel better. And for definitely anyone who is curious about, you know, what kind of things to do, just do whatever you feel happiest with. You know, like, I like meditating in the morning, and I know other people have a hard time meditating in the morning, and so they meditate at night. And I think there aren't any rules or regulations to how you do anything. You just do whatever makes you feel better. Yeah, so I just feel like right now we're in this age of, like, I would say extreme anxiety. I feel like a lot of people are feeling anxiety. There's a lot of talk about it that's just come to the forefront. You know, Paul, what do you see like the effect of you know, anxiety on our modern age? And what do you think we can do about it?
No, that's a beautiful question. It's loaded as well. Yeah, I just feel that we don't spend enough time with one another. Kind of like we're constantly texting or emailing, or watching Netflix or whatever, and we have to allow time to be with one another and to be present with one another. If we don't do that, it's just not going to work. So, and it's huge. Just be present in front of someone takes a lot of work. We just want to tune out. We just want to be somewhere else. So if we could just gently attempt to do that, just be present in the presence of somebody else and really listen, just be there with them, it make a lot of difference because it's kind of like a trickle effect. It's going to trickle off. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a really beautiful practice. And I remember when I came to India, and people would say, "Well, what is yoga?" And they said, "Well, yoga is just, even if you're cleaning the floor and you're fully present and you're focused on it and you do it well, then you're being present." And yeah, I think being present in front of people, it's a really great way to honor yourself and for them. And but it is hard. It's like in meditation, you have to keep pulling your brain back. And so, yeah, Kimilla, what are your thoughts on that?
Anxiety and the polarities that we're facing in this time, this massive time, it's a big issue, and I feel that every individual has their own unique destiny with that. And the classic formula of just setting your intention, if you're seeking an awakening or a transformation or freedom from suffering, just starting with seeding that intention, and then up with your practice or your effort that you put into that intention, whatever that may be. It might just be small steps or it might be radical. It's just where that person's at. And then you add to that divine grace. You open up your heart to your divine, and that's when you are receiving miracles. So you are basically connected and anything can be manifested. And anxiety becomes a tiny issue in the scheme of it, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, James, what do you think about the modern age of anxiety?
I can only speak from my own experience, and my own self and what I've been through with anxiety. But for me, anxiety, I started to look at it as a teacher. I started to see anxiety as a sign, so to speak. When I was having these panic attacks and when I was feeling anxious, it was a sign that I wasn't headed in the right direction, so to speak. Like, why am I going down this way? What am I doing in my life to where I'm having panic attacks every month for like 17 years? Obviously, something's not right. What's going on? So for me, anxiety became a warning signal of like, hey, you need to look into yourself. You need to look deeper. You're disconnected from your spirit. You're disconnected from yourself. So when I feel those moments of anxiety come up, or when I feel a little bit anxious, it's like it's a sign for me. It's a sign to slow down. It's a sign to spend more time in nature. It's a sign to do more meditation. It's a sign, all these things that we're talking about, all these different tools, anxiety, depression, all these different mental health challenges that we go through, in my opinion, are doorways into something amazing. And it's been so many stories that we read are these stories where people almost die, or people are severely depressed for years and years or something like this, and then something magical happens on the other side. Because so often these things, they show us exactly what we need to work on. So I started to see anxiety in my own life as a blessing, as opposed to this disease that I was being overwhelmed with. And when I flipped the idea of how I saw that and how I related to it, things started to change.
Yeah, and I think that concept of, we talk a lot about that in our film in Chasing the Present, that our thoughts are really the root cause of a lot of our suffering. And, you know, like you said, you just flipped how you thought about your anxiety. And yeah, like I do a lot of practices where I hear my thoughts. I don't identify with them as much. Like I used to they used to be so important. I used to think my thoughts were facts, and that's what really spun me out. And also they were like, maybe not the most positive thoughts. And I really work at, you know, meditating, slow down my thinking so that I could really look at my thoughts, and then I could change them and try to go from, you know, negative to positive thinking. So Paul, like, how much do you spend time doing that? And do you have like tricks or methods that you do looking at your thoughts?
Slowing myself down. Mm-hmm. Slowing myself down, slowing down the thought process that we just talking about. Yeah, again, throughout the day, you know, just try to observe myself throughout the day. It's called self-observation, just observing yourself, catching yourself in the where you're at. And if you're somewhere else, try to bring yourself back to the present moment, because it's the tendency is just to be somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else, somewhere else, energetically, mentally, emotionally. So it's always bringing yourself back to that moment with the breath in your body. And it's not as easy as I'm making it sound, but that's the practice.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a lifelong practice that we have to work at.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and you know, even in terms of like when you get into yoga and meditation and consciousness, or just in general, we hear a lot about gratitude right now. And for me, it was really, you know, if you're having a bad day or you're feeling sorry for yourself about all the things, you know, perhaps that you don't have, that you think you should have, or that others have, like going into gratitude and really being grateful for what you have, and appreciating, you know, the things that you have and others have. Yeah, Kimilla, what's your experience with gratitude, and how does it affect your life?
Yeah, it's so powerful if we can be in that state of gratitude and appreciation and open ourselves up to just dissolving all of the stress through that that feeling. If we can feel it, then we can change our thoughts and we can affect our emotions. And yeah, it's such a simple key, but it's so powerful.
So do you have any like specific methods? Like, do you write a gratitude journal? Are there things that you do to keep you in gratitude?
Honestly, I've had a few gratitude journals, but I end up putting my dreams in them and using them for many different things. But I see that they are powerful. Definitely one of the most amazing things is to write down your thoughts and deliver your dreams in the written word. It's a powerful practice. There's just so many practices. It's mind-boggling. It's almost like that puts people into anxiety. So stop the practicing.
Yeah, that's true. It's true. It's a lot. And at points, you know, I felt like, well, I would have to dedicate 7 hours of my
not
like
another
other practices. And then, you know, and that's super great.
And when you can let it go.
Sorry, I think you broke up for a second.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place to be, to use the tool and then know when you're done and you've graduated and you can let it go. And then open up and attract the next key.
Yeah. And we talk about that. We talk about that in our film, and I've experienced that as well. You know, I went to India and I could study yoga meditation 8 hours a day in an ashram, and, you know, I wasn't like, I mean, I felt better, you know, it was easy to do it then. The question is like, how do you bring it back?
Exactly.
How do you bring that back into your normal life?
How does that involve, your destiny?
Yeah. So that's always like interesting. And, you know, maybe James can speak a bit about that. Also, like we always talk about, you know, people who say like they're, you know, whether they say they're enlightened or they're happy and they're so free, and then they like go home and spend Christmas with their parents, you know, like everything, all their peace goes away. And James in our film, you know, speaks a lot, like speaks to his father in it. So It's curious.
Yeah, I think Ram Dass is the one who said that. Ram Dass said,
Yes.
if you think you're enlightened, to go home and spend a week with your family. And, that's what we did in our film. We did all these travels and all these trips, and we were feeling amazing. Like, yeah, life is amazing. No worries. In Nepal, in India, it's like, of course, it's amazing. You're just like meditating all day and eating awesome food and cruising around and meeting people. But, then I had to go back and explain to my dad, what I was doing and what I was doing with my life, and what I was going through, who's someone from a completely different generation. And, I grew up in a household where we weren't allowed to cry as boys. I had to keep all that stuff inside of myself. And I never even told my father that I had anxiety until I was 33. In the film, that conversation was the first time that I told him. So it's like, how do we take these practices and integrate them into our life, and also not this way like I used to do when I first became a vegetarian, of just like, oh, if you're not a vegetarian, you have to die, like everybody has to do this, because that, I don't know, in my opinion, that's really turning off. I think the way to do it is to just be it, and to just live it. And when you're living it, like Paul and Kimilla and everybody here on this panel is, when you're living that life, people just ask, like after 5 years, my father asked me like, hey, what's up with this vegetarian thing? Like, what's going on? So, oh yeah, I don't know, here, check out this book. And I gave it to him, and then he became a vegetarian for a year, just because of that, because he saw me change and lose weight and feel better about my life. And it happens also with meditation. When you're meditating, you just become more peaceful. It just happens. Instead of going out and telling everybody, you have to do this, you have to do that, you just change, and people start asking questions. And then that opens up the door for you to be able to have those conversations. So I think like how to bring these things into our life is, and my friend Vikram, Vikramana, he told me once something at the beginning. I was like, I want to find balance in my life. I want to, I just go away and I feel a certain way, and then I come back and I feel a different way. We only have, this is like one life, like when you're in India, you're still like in life. It's not like you go out of life. Or when you go to a retreat, you're still like in your life. Or when you're in LA, you're always experiencing life in the moment. You can't run from it. It's impossible. So just using every moment, no matter where we are, no matter who we're with, as an opportunity, like Paul said, to be present, and not just sitting across from somebody at dinner. That makes you physically present, but that doesn't make you present. Being on our phones, I do it, everybody does it, just sitting there at the dinner table and just somewhere completely else, we're not in that moment. And just using every single moment we have as an opportunity to bring ourselves back into it. When we're sitting at a table with friends and we catch our mind drifting about what we're going to do tomorrow or the next day or what happened in the past, just using it as an opportunity to bring ourselves back into that space. And for me, that's what the practice is all about. It's not about those times where I'm meditating. It's about the times where I'm not meditating, and learning how to integrate the stuff I learn in meditation into my relationships, into my daily life, into my family.
Yeah. So I think it's, with all of these things, like, especially whenever I hear people on a panel or I hear teachers, like, it's easy to think like, well, they sound like they, are so happy, and like, we're speaking about how to deal with our feelings and non-attachment, but, it's really important. I think also, like, for me, like, I still suffer, I have all these practices, but I definitely still suffer. It's just that I now have tools to deal with them. And I would say, like, with my emotions, they're shorter, like, whereas before, if something happened, I might be anxious for months and months and months about it. And now it's like a day or two or whatever it is, it's just the rebound time is much faster. And yes, I'd love to hear, Paul, like, what are your thoughts on that? And do you still suffer?
No, I don't.
You're so lucky.
Suffer. Of course I suffer. Anyone that tells you otherwise, I think they're, I'm telling the truth. Yeah, and what James was saying about, making the practice not just when you're meditating, but again, in life, my wife and I had 2 kids, 2 boys, and we homeschooled. And that was very challenging. Even though she was a yoga teacher, even though I but you put a ranting little kid in front of you for 5 minutes, you're gonna go nuts. So yeah, we work with our children 24 hours a day, and they were our and still are our biggest teachers because they challenge you to can you just be present with me because they demand your ultimate attention, your ultimate presence, and yeah, that's when I said, okay, this is working, meaning the practices, because we got through a lot of upheavals and valleys, and yeah, it's just rising to those challenges that are not, again, what James and Kimilla and you were saying on us, that we can easily say, oh, we're at peace when we're meditating. But again, the challenge is when you're taken out of that meditative state and put in a real life situation. That's when you're going to test the level of your practice.
Yeah. And it's great to hear you share about having children, because I know that, I mean, I don't have any, but like I have a lot of nieces and nephews, and so that for sure it's wonderful, and you're very present, and I'm sure it's very challenging as well. Well, I'd love to see if we have any questions from the audience.
Yes, so we have a question from Lon Haber. When in the deepest, darkest place, actually he's spotlighted, so maybe he can ask his questions. Yeah. Paul Haber. It's here. Oh, you can unmute yourself.
Hi. Hi, Anna. Hi, everybody. It's so nice to see you. I was thinking, okay, so when you're in the deepest, darkest place, like we were talking about at the beginning, and then whatever it is that you work so hard to find the blessing and turn it into a lesson and live an even more aware, healthier life. For me, I try to do, and I call it meditative living, but so then what's next? Especially in these times where it's like, I feel like that's on the back of every, I mean, I live on a mountain for a really long time, so life hasn't changed all that much, except for it has, but, or is it just keep doing more of the same, or is there or is there something else is there like another step?
Who wants to answer that question?
I mean, I think for me, a big part of overcoming my anxiety was actually getting rid of that question of what's next. Because when we think about what's next, then we're already into the future of like, what do I do next? What can I do next? I think by just like doing these practices and just continually doing them, things just open up. We become more grateful. We become more gracious. I think, slowly transform, and you find yourself doing acts of service and wanting to help others and all of these kind of things. But I feel like it's more of like a natural unfolding, as opposed to like thinking of a next step and trying to plan it out. It's more about like just realizing that this moment is the only step, and just immersing ourselves in that as much as we possibly can. And what happens from that point on is a mystery, and just surrendering to that mystery. That's for me how it is.
Anybody else wants to answer this question, or moving into Serena and Ethan have a question for Paul?
Hi, Paul. I can't see myself, so I don't know if you.
There you go.
So you mentioned earlier that you have 3 different routines that you do throughout the day. And I'm curious if you'd be open to telling us like some details about those routines. Are they the same? Are they different? And how they help you at a different point in the day?
Yeah, so in the morning, I do what's called the Buddha laugh, yeah? It's a Taoist practice where you just hold your belly and you just laugh. That's hard to do, especially when things are going really, really challenging for you. So every morning I do like anywhere from 14 to 36 rounds of just belly laughter, and then just shaking out, because throughout the night, there's a lot of stuff, in the dreamscape, a lot of things attach themselves to you. So you're kind of like just releasing that. Then I do another, what's called the 16 sounds. That's a Taoist practice. And their philosophy, the different organs attract different emotions. So, like the liver is anger, and the spleen is worry, the kidneys is fear, the lungs is depression, and the heart is just a lot of impatience, and so forth and so on. So there's different postures and sounds to release what gets contracted within those organs. So that's what I do, and then I do maybe like a 20-minute yoga flow and do some chanting. And then throughout the day, I go on these long walks where you ask me. So I go on these walks and I practice these energetic loops, ankle loop, shin loop, thigh loop, pelvic loop, kidney loop, shoulder loop, a skull loop. So it becomes kind of like if you're using a mala bead, but you're using your body instead, okay, energetically. So you're being present within the body, within the breath, as you're walking, as opposed to being lost in thought. So those are a couple. I don't want to eat up more time with more stuff. I hope that answers. And great seeing you guys. Where are you guys, by the way?
We're in Colorado for the winter and the spring until New York gets itself together a little bit more.
Yeah, we're out here enjoying nature and doing what everyone here has said, just kind of reconnecting with ourselves and
trying to find presence and peace of mind.
Yeah, and doing creative projects.
Great.
Where are you in Colorado?
We're in Boulder. We're like, last night we were 15 miles away from the nearest wildfire.
Yeah.
So we're hoping we don't get evacuated. We just got here a few days ago, so hopefully we get to stay where we are.
Nothing like, a massive fire to show you that you are not in control of the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother's out there, by the way. He lives out there.
Oh, no way.
Nice.
Cool. Do we have more questions?
Ingrid, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Ingrid.
I was just saying that. So we don't have any more questions, but I have a question for James and Anna, because they did a wonderful film, and that is now on Apple TV, and also went across the country to many different virtual platforms. And I want to know, like, what was the reaction of people? How have you impacted just through that powerful film that you did? And why also, what was the genesis of the film? Because I think that, I know Anna is in the business of film, but James, so I'd like to know, how have you impacted people and the genesis of the making of the film, Chasing the Present?
People have come up to us after the film, and I feel like, the biggest impact the film has had on people was, and it's what I hope as well, was just that it just shows that it's okay to talk about this kind of stuff. Just bringing awareness to the topic. I think the most powerful thing that's happened to me, going around the world screening the film and staying after and talking to people, was just people feeling that it's okay to share about what they're going through. That it's okay to be struggling, because everyone's struggling on some level. That it's okay to feel anxious. That it's okay to have times where we feel sad and depressed, and to not feel ashamed of those kind of things, no matter what it is we're going through. And I think me talking about it in the film and us making a film about that, hopefully it just showed people, like, it's okay. The more we talk about these things, the more light we bring into the topic, the more light we bring into the darkness. And for me, the genesis of making the film was just, like I had said before, just wanting to understand why I was suffering so much, and wanting to talk about it, and wanting to get into it, and wanting to feel it, and wanting to be okay with whatever outcome that came. So for me, yeah, it's about awareness. It's about just sharing and bringing bringing light to these topics. And if you are struggling, knowing that it's okay to talk about it, knowing that other people are struggling, knowing that there's nothing wrong with you, that there's nothing wrong talking about these things. For me, that's what I hope, and what I've seen has been the biggest impact so far of the film.
Yeah, and as Ingrid says, like I've always been in the film industry. I've always been a producer, worked in production, and I changed my life, a few years ago, and also had like this life transformation and started doing yoga and doing self-inquiry and therapy and meditation and a lot of different modalities just to feel better and just to feel like I was always stressed and anxious and worried. And and then I took kind of like my film background and just wanted to relay like the things that I learned that just helped me so much and helped me feel better. All I wanted to do was share that as much as possible with people, if they're looking for it, because it feels like it's something, like James said before, like we're not taught how to regulate our emotions in school. And I think we're looking at an age right now where that is coming to fruition, that the fact that that isn't being addressed is causing a lot of suffering, and people are looking for answers. So that's how we ended up doing this, and it's been really wonderful.
Thank you. I have my team translating in Spanish everything you're saying. Yeah, but it has been a wonderful time. I hope that all of our audience members enjoy this special moment with all of you, because it's also important to talk about these things. As James said, we don't really talk about these things. It's almost taboo, to talk about feeling anxious or unhappy or stressed out or frustrated or sad. And these days, I mean, especially right now with the pandemic, we've been actually at the festival like connecting even furthermore with audience members in so many different parts of the world, because of the platform that my mother and I created. So I'm really grateful to have shared this time with you all. And is there any final words that Paul, Kimilla, James, and Anna, you want to say?
Thank you, Ingrid. It's been so beautiful to start at 1:30 this morning. I got out of bed and met you at 2 a.m. my time. That was beautiful. And then I had a little snooze and then I came back. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say thank you so much, Ingrid and Sonia, for putting together this amazing festival and to help spread these really important messages now more than ever. And so thank you guys so much for putting this together, and thank you for everyone as well who was part of this panel, and everyone who tuned in. And Anna, thank you so much for doing such a beautiful job moderating as well.
Yeah, thank you all. It's been wonderful to be here, and yeah, thanks Ingrid for even thinking to put like a wellness panel in a film festival. I hope that all endeavors to start to do that more and more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with everyone. Thank you, Anna, Kimilla, James, Ingrid, Sonia, Daniel, Don, Serena, Nathan, everybody else, that's here, that's helped out and that has gathered today for this hour, to talk about these things, because it's so important, and always remember that the gift is right there and the present breath, just there. Think about how many breaths do we have left. Just start appreciating them a little bit more.
Thank you. Yeah, I learned a lot again today. I'm learning every day with all the panels, and I thought that it's such beautiful to start my day with the Kundalini practice and also this beautiful conversation around wellness, well-being, and I'll keep everything here and here, making sure that I keep this going. We have another panel at 3 p.m. talking about climate change. Please come back. This is the last day of the film festival. Watch some films. Again, we have 130 films. You probably won't be able to watch everything, but watch what you can, support emerging filmmakers. And I look forward to seeing you at 3 p.m. It will be a Facebook Live, and I thank you all so much again, Paul, Kimilla, James, and Anna for moderating. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And Kimilla, have a good night. Are you going back to sleep?
I might go back to sleep and just relax, but my husky will be awake in about an hour, and then I'll be going to the dog beach.
Oh, lucky you.
And yeah, I'm very grateful to all of you, and I wish you a beautiful, beautiful adventure, and hopefully catch up soon. Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.